High in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, a hotel stands like something out of a fairy tale. Its pristine white walls and gleaming red roof are perfectly framed by snow-capped peaks. But behind this picture-perfect postcard beauty lies one of America's most mysterious and unsettling legends. This is the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, a place where elegance and eeriness have become so intertwined that history and fiction are now one continuous, chilling story. To most people, this is the hotel that inspired Stephen King's Asterisk. The Shining Asterisk. The Shining Asterisk, the real-life overlook hotel, the birthplace of one of modern literature's most terrifying works. But the Stanley was whispering its own ghost stories long before fiction made it famous. It was built in 1909 by F.O. Stanley, the brilliant inventor behind the Stanley steamer automobile. He envisioned it as a grand retreat, a symbol of wealth and modern progress nestled in the healing mountain air. But with that vision of luxury came something else. Strange coincidences, unexplained happenings, and an atmosphere that, even in broad daylight, seemed to hum with an unseen energy. From the very beginning, visitors spoke of whispers in empty hallways, phantom piano music, and icy drafts that moved through sealed rooms. The Stanley was never built to be a place of horror, yet somehow it became one. The story of its creator, F.O. Stanley, is woven deeply into the hotel's very soul. He first came to Estes Park after a grim tuberculosis diagnosis, told he had only months to live. But the crisp, clean mountain air seemed to perform a miracle. Recovered and out of gratitude, he built the Stanley as a symbol of hope and healing. And yet, the man who cheated death became forever tied to a place that would be defined by it. After his passing, guests and staff began to feel that his presence never truly left. They'd report seeing a dapper, well-dressed gentleman walking the halls, inspecting the rooms, only to vanish into thin air when someone tried to speak to him. His wife, Flora, a talented pianist, was also said to linger. Staff would hear the soft, distant echo of her music floating from the grand piano late at night, long after everyone had gone to bed. What began as gentle, almost comforting folklore slowly morphed into something stranger. The stories accumulated, each one more difficult to explain away. Lights would flicker and die without any electrical cause. Doors would swing shut on their own, and photographs, when developed, would sometimes reveal ghostly figures that no one had seen with their own eyes. The Stanley was becoming a living museum of whispers, each one adding to its growing legend. By the 1970s, however, the hotel's golden age was over. The grand facade was fading, its glamour dimmed by time and neglect. It was right at this moment of decline that fate, in its own strange way, intervened. It came in the form of a struggling young writer named Stephen King. In the late fall of 1974, King and his wife Tabitha checked into the Stanley just as it was about to close down for the harsh winter season. They were its only guests. That night, as a storm raged outside, King wandered the vast, empty halls. The hotel's silence was immense, filled only by the howl of the wind and the echo of his own footsteps. It was a profoundly unsettling experience. That night, he had a terrifying nightmare. He dreamed of his young son being chased down the long, lonely corridors by a possessed fire hose. He woke up in a cold sweat, shaken but electrified. He had his story. Within days, he began outlining what would become Asterisk. The Shining Asterisk. The fictional Overlook Hotel was born a dark mirror of the Stanley, a place where the past never dies, and madness waits just beneath the surface. King's novel, and later Stanley Kubrick's film, changed the Stanley's legacy forever. It was no longer just a historic mountain resort. It was now the face of American horror. The book's massive success transformed the hotel into a cultural landmark. Tourists, horror fans, and paranormal investigators flocked to the property, drawn by both King's terrifying fiction and the real-life ghost stories that had been there all along. The line between what was real and what was imagined began to blur. This was especially true in room 217, the very room where King had stayed. It became legendary. Guests reported lights turning on and off by themselves, their luggage being mysteriously unpacked, and sudden, bone-chilling cold spots appearing near the bed. Housekeepers shared stories of unseen hands, neatly folding blankets on empty beds and doors, locking themselves from the inside. Skeptics dismissed it all as overactive imaginations fueled by a good story. Believers saw it as undeniable proof. Either way, the Stanley had become something rare. A living, breathing myth. It wasn't just haunted by spirits anymore. It was haunted by its own story, with every visitor adding a new layer to its legend. What makes the Stanley so unnerving is the stark contrast between its design and its reputation. Architecturally, it was built for beauty, not fear. Its bright, sunlit hallways, colonial revival style, and wide-open verandas were meant to soothe the soul, not unsettle it. But as it turns out, beauty can be the perfect mask for deep-seated wound. The perfect symmetry of the long halls, the quiet tick-tock of the antique elevator. The way the polished wood reflects flickering candlelight toll of these beautiful details create an incredible tension between calm and dread. Psychologists often say that our minds are wired to fill silence with meaning, and the Stanley offers you endless, humming silence. The stillness itself feels alive. Every creak of the floorboards becomes a whisper. Every shadow in the corner of your eye becomes a question you're afraid to ask. Over the decades, countless visitors have documented their strange encounters. The faint sound of children's laughter has been heard echoing in empty stairwells. On ghost tours, people have recorded the sound of footsteps pacing just out of sight. The hotel's magnificent ballroom, once a stage for high society dances, now seems to host invisible dancers, as guests report flickering lights and cold drafts that circle them in the empty room. The fourth floor, which originally housed the nannies and children of wealthy guests, remains one of the most active areas for paranormal claims. People report hearing laughter, the distant sound of running feet, and even the faint bounce of a childish ball rolling down the hallway when no one is there. Paranormal investigators have captured disembodied voices on their recorder soft, polite whispers that seem to come from another century entirely. Whether you believe it's genuine or purely psychological, the atmosphere is undeniable. The Stanley doesn't need to prove its ghosts are real. It simply invites you to stand in its halls and feel it for yourself. Beyond the supernatural, the story of the Stanley reveals something profound about mythology in America. The hotel is a mirror, reflecting our own complicated relationship with mystery and the unknown. It was a place built on light and optimism that became famous for darkness and fear. It reminds us that history and imagination are often two sides of the same coin, almost impossible to separate. Visitors often arrive expecting to be scared, and the hotel, in a way, gives them exactly what they bring with them: the quiet echo of their own fears and expectations. Fear, after all, is a participatory sport. The Stanley's true power is psychological. It doesn't just show you things, it makes you listen to the silence and wonder what's listening back. Today, the Stanley Hotel thrives by embracing its dual identity. It is simultaneously a luxury hotel and a living legend. It hosts weddings, film festivals, and elegant dinners, all while running nightly ghost tours that sell out weeks in advance. But even with all the modern activity, when you stand in that grand lobby or look up the long, winding staircases, you can't escape the feeling that the air here is heavier than it should be. The hotel feels alive not just with history, but with a palpable energy. Some say it's the collective emotion of millions of visitors feeding the myth year after year. Others believe it's something older, something sentient, still watching from the rafters. Whatever the truth may be, the Stanley Hotel has become more than just a building. It's an idea that lives deep within the American imagination. The connection between the Stanley and Asterisk, the shining asterisk, isn't just one of inspiration. It's one of reflection. In fiction, the Overlook Hotel devours the people who enter it. But in reality, the Stanley Hotel seems to preserve them in memories, in photographs, and in the stories that are whispered from one guest to another. King once said he wrote his novel to explore themes of isolation and madness, but the Stanley itself explores something quieter. The persistence of memory, every story ever told within its walls, from ghostly rumors to the laughter of honeymooners, still seems to linger, overlapping in invisible layers. Perhaps it's not the dead who haunt the Stanley. Perhaps it's the living who return year after year, unable to let go of what they felt here. As night falls and the last ghost tour ends, the Stanley becomes what it has always been: silent, grand, and unsettlingly aware. The mountains stand around it like ancient sentinels. The wind whistles through its hallways like a long, slow breath. And somewhere, if you listen closely enough, you might just hear the faint sound of piano notes drifting through the air, even though no one is near the keys. It's in those quiet moments that you start to understand what every visitor has felt since 1909. That the Stanley Hotel is not haunted by fear, but by fascination. It stands as timeless proof that some places don't just hold stories, they become them. Thanks for joining us on this trip into the hidden corners of the U.S. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. See you then.